Success flourishes only in perseverance, ceaseless, restless perseverance. Baron Manfred von Richthofen. Today we're covering the Federal Aviation Regulations. We'll start with a short scenario. We'll get into a flight recap, get into the regulations, and do a quiz and assign some homework. So here's our scenario. Watch what happens and try to decide what you would do. So it looks to me like we are on short final, and we're getting pretty slow. About here, we should be about 65 knots, and we're getting pretty low as well. Remember, anytime you're landing, you can always go around, instead of trying to save the landing. Now we bounce and we start to porpoise. At this point, we should be going around. Don't try to salvage a landing that will end up getting you hurt. All right, to recap, you should be at 65 knots or your approach speed on final. You should be at an appropriate altitude following the glide, the PAPI or the VASI. And if you need to go around, just go around. If you bounce, go around. If you start to porpoise, go around. Going around should be a standard tool in your tool bag. All right, we covered that. Cool. So take a moment now to recap your most recent flight. Put it in the comments or send me a message detailing what your objective was, what went well, and what could use some work, and what was your favorite part of your flight. So the Federal Aviation Regulations. To start off, in general, Part 43, that's Part 43, covers maintenance, preventative maintenance of your aircraft. Part 61 covers how to earn your pilot certificate, and Part 91 typically covers how to keep your certificate. Keeping that in mind, let's go over some definitions. Night is defined as the time between end of civil twilight and the beginning of morning civil twilight, as published in the American Air Almanac converted to local time. For the sake of recency, this counts as 1 hour after sunset to 1 hour before sunrise. Regarding the certification of airmen, these are aircraft categories. They're airplane, rotorcraft, glider, lighter than air. These are the large categories that aircraft fall under. Then there are airplane classes, like single-engine land, single-engine sea. So you'll see something like airplane, single-engine land, or airplane, single-engine sea, or airplane, multi-engine land, or multi-engine sea. Let's review. For recency experience, what is considered nighttime? You got it. 1 hour after sunset and 1 hour before sunrise. Explain category versus class regarding the certification of airmen. Regarding the certification of aircraft, these are categories. There's transport, normal, utility, limited, restricted, acrobatic, and provisional. Here are some abbreviations worth keeping in mind. VFE stands for Maximum Flap Extended Speed. VLE stands for Maximum Landing Gear Extended Speed. VNO is Maximum Structural Cruising Speed. VA is Maneuver Speed. VSO is Stalling Speed in the landing configuration. VX is the speed for your best angle of climb. And VY is the speed for the best rate of climb. Keep in mind your airworthiness certificates remain in force as long as maintenance and alteration of the aircraft are performed per the regulations. An AD is an airworthiness directive issued under Part 39, and these are required correction for unsafe conditions. They must be complied with unless they give a specific exemption in the AD. Remember, you can't operate a product to which an AD applies except in accordance with the requirements of that AD. That means that if the AD says you don't have to comply with it, then you are allowed to not comply with it. But in that case, you would be complying with it anyways. I think it's just a goofy situation. Anyways, keep that in mind. So let's go over some abbreviations. What is a VFE? You got it. Maximum Flap Extended Speed. VLE? That's the landing gear one. VNO, maximum structural cruising speed. VA, maneuvering speed. VSO, that's the stalling speed in the landing configuration. Vx, that's the speed for your best angle of climb. And Vy, that's the speed for the best rate of climb. Nice, you got it. Like I said before, Part 43 covers maintenance. And it says that a person who holds a pilot certificate may perform preventative maintenance on any airplane owned or operated by that airplane that is not used in air carrier services. And PM means, or preventative maintenance, means simple or minor preservation not involving complex assembly. So if you're not tearing apart the engine, if you're just doing like oil changes or something minor, that's preventative maintenance. And you, as a private pilot, are authorized to perform that maintenance. To approve the airplane for return service after the maintenance is done, the pilot must hold at least a private pilot certificate. And after your work is done, you should sign the aircraft logbook with a signature, certificate number and date, and description. Let's recap. Airworthiness certificates remain in force as long as what? Maintenance and alteration of the aircraft are performed by the regulations. And who may perform preventative maintenance? That's right, a person with a private pilot certificate. Remember, Part 61 covers how to earn your certificate, and Part 91 is how to keep it. When acting as a pilot in command or as a required pilot flight crew member, you need to have these documents: a valid pilot certificate, your medical, photo ID, and these must be readily accessible in the aircraft. If an officer of the law or the FAA or an NTSB officer requests it, you must present your certificate and your medical. Let's recap. Airworthiness certificates remain in force as long as maintenance and alteration of the aircraft are performed per the Federal Aviation Regulations. When acting as PIC or as a required pilot flight crew member, what documents do you need? That's right, your pilot certificate, your medical, and your photo ID. Continuing on with Part 61, let's get into alcohol and drugs. In general, you don't want to be doing alcohol and drugs before you fly. You need to provide a written report of each motor vehicle action involving alcohol or drugs to the FAA Civil Aviation Security Division no later than 60 days after a motor vehicle action. It's best not to mix alcohol and drugs with driving or flying. That's going to keep things simple. But in the event that you do, you want to notify them again no later than 60 days after the motor vehicle action. Your medical. For operations requiring a private, recreational, or student pilot, a first, second, or third class medical certificate expires at the end of the 60th month after the date of the examination shown on the certificate if you're less than 40 years old. Once you turn 40, your medical certificate is only good for about 24 calendar months. To act as a pilot in command of a high-performance airplane, you must receive and log ground and flight training and receive a logbook endorsement. So that means anything greater than 200 horsepower. You also need a type rating for any of these: an aircraft greater than 12,500 pounds, a turbojet, or anything else that the FAA has decided you need a type certificate. You are required to come back every 24 calendar months for a flight review. That is 1 hour of ground training and 1 hour of flight training, basically to make sure that you are staying up to date with everything that's going on in the aviation community. To be a pilot in command and take up passengers, you need to perform 3 takeoffs and landings in the preceding 90 days in the same category, class, and type if required. And if you're flying a tailwheel, these must be to a full stop. And if you're flying at night, they must also be to a full stop. What must you perform and log if you want to fly with passengers as a private pilot? That's that 3 takeoffs and landings in the preceding 90 days in the same category, class, and type if required. Going on with our Part 61 discussion, if you move and you have a change of address, you must notify the FAA in writing. You may not use your certificate after 30 days after moving unless you notify the FAA. If you want to tow gliders, you need to have at least a private pilot certificate. You need 100 hours of piloting command time in the same category, class, and type, if required, that you're using to tow that glider. And you need a logbook endorsement from an authorized instructor certifying that the person has received ground and flight training in gliders. You must also do this in the preceding 24 calendar months. Make at least 3 actual or simulated glider tows while accompanied by a pilot, a qualified pilot, or made at least 3 flights as PIC of a glider towed by an aircraft. Part 61, limitations. Private pilots may not pay less than the pro rata share of operating expenses. That means that if you have you, your buddy, and another buddy flying in the aircraft, this is my terribly drawn airplane here, bam, look at that, you need to pay your share of the flight. So if there are 3 of you flying in the plane, you need to pay at least 1/3 of the flight costs. That includes any fuel, oil, or airport expenditures or rental fees, at least the pro rata share. And you may only fly, for a business if it is incidental. For example, if you are flying to meet a client to go sell them guitars, and the flight portion of the operation is essentially just to get you from point A to point B, then that would be just fine. But if you are flying passengers around for that business, then that is not authorized, and that would fall under commercial operations. Airworthiness certificates remain in force as long as maintenance and alterations of the aircraft are performed per the FARs. When acting as PIC or as a required pilot flight crew member, what documents do you need? That's the 3, the pilot certificate, medical, and your photo ID. What must you perform and log if you want to fly with passengers as a private pilot? You got it. 3 takeoffs and landings in the preceding 90 days in same category, class, and type if required. Going on with our Part 61, you may fly as pilot in command for a charitable organization for which passengers make donations if the following conditions are met. The FSDO is notified at least 7 days before the flight. FSDO, by the way, stands for the Flight Standards District Office. The flight is conducted from an adequate public airport. The pilot has logged at least 500 hours. No acrobatics or formation flights are performed. The aircraft holds a standard airworthiness certificate and is airworthy. The flight is conducted in day VFR conditions. The flight is nonstop, begins and ends at the same airport, and is conducted within a 25 nautical mile radius of that airport. If you do all this, then you can fly for a charitable donation or a charitable organization that passengers make donations to. So your friend wants to pay you for flying, to thank you for flying him around. Is this authorized? Of course not. You must pay at least your share of the flight. All right, take 5 minutes to pause the video and write down from memory everything you can from the lesson, and then let's get into the quiz. Ready? Pause. Okay, let's hit it. What is one purpose of flaps? To enable the pilot to make steeper approaches to a landing without increasing airspeed. With respect to the certification of airmen, which are categories of aircraft? Airplane, rotorcraft, glider, and lighter than air. Which V speed represents maximum flap extended speed? VFE. How long does the airworthiness of an aircraft remain valid? As long as the aircraft is maintained and operated as required by the Federal Aviation Regulations. Which statement relates to Bernoulli's principle? Air traveling faster over the curved upper surface of an airfoil causes lower pressure on the top surface. What should an owner or operator know about airworthiness directives? They are mandatory. Who may perform preventative maintenance on an aircraft and approved for return service? A private or a commercial pilot. Which operation would be described as preventative maintenance? Servicing the landing gear wheel bearings. When must a current pilot certificate be in the pilot's personal possession or readily accessible in the aircraft? Anytime when acting as pilot in command or as a required crew member. A third-class medical certificate is issued to a 36-year-old pilot on August 10th of this year To exercise the privileges of a private pilot certificate, the medical certificate will be valid until midnight on August 31st, 5 years later. The pilot in command is required to hold a type rating in which aircraft? An aircraft having a gross weight of more than 12,500 pounds. If a private pilot had a flight review on October 30th of this year, when is the next flight review required? October 31st, 2 years later. Your brother wants you to take him flying. You must have made at least 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in your aircraft within the preceding 90 days. What exception, if any, permits a private pilot to act as a pilot in command of an aircraft carrying passengers who pay for the flight? If a donation is made to a charitable organization for the flight. Wingtip vortices created by large aircraft tend to sink below the aircraft, generating turbulence. All right, we did it. Your homework, if you choose to accept it, is to research the G1000, go read the Airplane Flying Handbook and the PHAC, and then test yourself. Go to this quiz site and practice the exam. I would love to hear your feedback. Send it to me directly or through the website. And here are my references. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week.